Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into a fascinating little corner of Bollywood today. Have you ever noticed how many children of famous actors, well, star kids as they're often called, start out as assistant directors before they become actors themselves?
Oh, yeah, it's super common. Like, it's practically a rite of passage.
Right. So we're calling this the AD starter pack. Like it's this pre-fame ritual they all have to go through. We've got Ibrahim Ali Khan, for example. He was an AD on Rocky Aurani Ki Prem Kahani.
And then went on to star in Sarcasm
Exactly. And then Veer Paharia was working behind the scenes on Badia.
before landing a role in
So
Skyforce.
yeah, tons of examples.
Okay, so it's definitely a thing. But I'm curious, is this like a recent phenomenon, or has this always been a part of how Bollywood
Oh
works?
no, it's been going on for ages, like way before these guys. Think back to Varun Dhawan, for instance. He was an assistant director on My Name is Khan.
Oh, yeah,
And of course, before he became, Varun
a
Dhawan.
huge star.
Exactly.
And Arjun Kapoor, too, right? Yep. Ishaq Wazad was his debut, but before that, he was on set as an AD, learning the ropes.
Oh yeah, I totally forgotten about that. It's so ingrained you almost don't even think about it.
Right.
And I mean, even some of the biggest names, guys like Hrithik Roshan and Ranbir Kapoor, they did the whole AD thing too.
It's like a Bollywood tradition at this point, almost like an apprenticeship.
Okay, so it's definitely not just a passing fad. This has been going on for decades, but it really makes you wonder, what's the motivation here? Is it genuinely about learning the craft, paying your dues, or is it more strategic, more about public image?
That's where it gets really interesting because it's probably a bit of both, right? The experience is valuable for sure, but you can't ignore the PR aspect for these star kids.
Okay, so break that down for me a little bit. What do you mean by the PR aspect?
Well, put yourself in their shoes for a second. Imagine you're the child of a Bollywood legend. You've grown up in the spotlight. There are probably paparazzi photos of you as a toddler, right? And now you want to be an actor too.
Yeah, it's got to be a lot of pressure.
Huge pressure. And the audience is already going to be skeptical. They're going to be like, oh, here comes another one just writing on their family name. Do they even have any talent?
Right, it's like they're automatically starting off with this disadvantage. People assume they've been handed everything.
Exactly. So by starting as an AD, they can try to shift that narrative a little. They can say, look, I'm not afraid of hard work. I'm willing to start at the bottom, just like anyone else.
It's like preemptively addressing those nepotism accusations before they even start acting.
Precisely. It's a way to show a little humility, to
Yeah.
signal that they're not taking their privilege for granted.
It's clever. I mean, does it actually work, though? Does
Yeah.
the public really buy it?
Well, public perception is a tricky thing. Lots of factors at play, right? But I think it definitely helps soften the blow. It creates a storyline, of dedication and hard work. It can make them more sympathetic to the audience.
Yeah, I can see that. So it's not just about learning the ropes. It's about shaping how the public sees them. It's a calculated PR move.
In a way, yeah. But it's important to remember, not every star kid takes this route. Ibrahim Khan, for example. He's Shah Rukh Khan's son, obviously, but he's going straight into directing. No ADing for him.
It's true. It makes you wonder if he's intentionally trying to distance himself from that whole nepotism debate, forge his own path.
Possibly. He's cutting his own identity. He's not just another star kid following the same old formula.
Right, exactly. He's breaking the mold a bit. But for the ones who do go the AD route, is it always calculated? Or could there be some genuine passion for filmmaking in there too?
I think it varies from person to person, Some might genuinely love the craft, love being on set, and they see the AD experience as a valuable way to learn. Others might be more focused on the career benefits.
So it's not like a one-size-fits-all thing. It's a mix of ambition, personal choices, maybe even some family pressure. Who knows?
Exactly. It's complicated. And that's what makes it so fascinating to analyze. It gives you a glimpse into how Bollywood works behind the scenes, the power dynamics, the challenges these star kids face.
Yeah, it makes you think the pressure they must feel to live up to their parents' legacies, prove themselves in this world that already has all these preconceived notions about them.
Absolutely. And that's why this whole AD starter pack thing is more than just a quirky trend. It's a window into these deeper issues of lineage, privilege, the whole struggle for success in a super competitive industry.
It's almost like this microcosm of the entire nepotism debate, but played out on film sets.
Exactly. And it raises some big questions about fairness, opportunity, and what it really takes to make it in Bollywood.
Makes you wonder if everyone is truly playing on a level playing field.
That's a question we're going to keep digging into. But for now, it's safe to say that this AD starter pack is more than just a stepping stone. It's a strategic move, a public relations tool, and a reflection of the unique challenges faced by those born into Bollywood royalty.
It's like we're getting this behind-the-scenes peek into how the industry really works.
For sure. And it shows that even in a world of glamour and fame, the path to stardom in Bollywood is rarely a simple one, especially when you're carrying the weight of a famous last name.
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically what you're saying is that even in Bollywood, where everything seems so, glitzy and effortless, there's a ton of strategy and maneuvering happening behind the curtain.
Exactly. And the AD starter pack is just one example of how these star kids try to navigate the complexities of lineage and public perception as they work toward their Bollywood dreams.
So it's a reminder that nothing is as simple as he seems. There's always more to the story.
Absolutely. And those layers are what make this whole topic so interesting to unpack.
All right, so we've established this 80 starter pack is a real trend. It's not a new thing. And it's probably as much about image management as it is about gaining experience.
Right. It's how they try to manage public perception to level the playing field, at least in the eyes of the audience.
But does it actually work? Does the public really buy into this "I'm just a humble, hardworking kid" narrative, or are they still skeptical?
That is the million-dollar question, and one we'll tackle in the next part of our deep dive. We'll look at some specific examples, see how it's played out for different star kids and what the audience reaction has been.
Awesome. So we've laid the groundwork, introduced the phenomenon, a little history, some potential motivations.
And establish that it's a more complex issue than just, learning the ropes. There are deeper implications here.
Exactly. It's about power dynamics, family legacies, and the pressure of public perception.
Right. So next time, we'll go even deeper, see how this 80s starter pack really plays out in the real world and whether it's actually an effective strategy for navigating Bollywood stardom.
Sounds fascinating. I can't wait.
Me neither. We'll be back soon with more insights into this intriguing corner of the industry.
It's interesting, isn't it? This whole 80 starter pack thing. It's like a microcosm of the bigger nepotism debate that always surrounds Bollywood. Totally. It's almost like Star Kid Starter Pack 101, step one, hold the clapboard. But does that actually make things more fair? Or does it just kind of make nepotism a little more palatable?
That's the question. On the surface, it looks like they're paying their dues, getting hands-on experience, maybe learning to appreciate how much work goes into making a film, the long hours, all the different people involved.
Right, getting a dose of reality. But you can't just ignore the built-in advantages they have, the connections, the instant name recognition. They have access that other aspiring actors wouldn't even dream of.
Exactly. And that's where things get tricky. Even if they are genuinely putting in the work, is it really a level playing field when they're starting so far ahead?
It's a tough one because every parent wants to help their kids succeed, right? And it's not just Bollywood. The whole entertainment industry has always had these family dynasties.
True. But you'd hope that ultimately it's talent and dedication that determine who makes it, not just who your parents are.
Of course. But Bollywood has its own rules, and those rules definitely seem to favor those with connections.
It's a system, that's for sure. And public perception matters a lot, too. Audiences aren't stupid. They can tell when someone's getting a free pass versus when someone has really earned their spot.
Totally. And that perception, it can really affect how people see these star kids and their work. If the audience thinks they haven't really paid their dues, it's going to affect their credibility. Like, can you really believe this performance if you think they just got the role because of their last name?
Right. There's this respect that comes from knowing someone struggled, that they persevered. When that's missing, it can create a distance between the actor and the audience. I wonder what the star kids themselves think about all this. Like, how aware are they of this whole perception issue?
They have to be aware, right?
Mm.
Growing up in that world, they see the headlines, the constant comparisons to their parents. It's got to be a lot of pressure.
Tons of pressure. So maybe this whole 80 starter pack thing, it becomes a way to cope with that pressure, to try to control the narrative a little bit.
Like they're trying to say, hey, look at me. I'm not just some spoiled kid coasting on my family name. I'm putting in the work. But the question is, does it work? Does it actually quiet the critics?
I think it depends on the individual, on their talent, how hard they're willing to work, and ultimately, can they actually connect with the audience? Can people see past the family name and see a genuine performer?
So it's not a guaranteed formula for success, but maybe it helps smooth the way a little. It creates a more, I don't know, a more acceptable story for how they entered the industry.
Perhaps. But at the end of the day, it's the audience who decides. They'll be the judge of whether these star kids deserve to be there.
Thinking about this whole thing, it reminds me of Vicky Kaushal. He started as an AD too, but he didn't come from a big film family like some of the others we've been talking about.
That's a great point. And he's built a very successful career. He's got critical acclaim, a huge fan base. He's proven himself.
So it is possible to make it without that famous last name, even in a system that seems to favor those with connections. It gives you hope that talent and hard work can still win out, even when things seem stacked against you.
It really does. It's a good reminder that there are always exceptions. And it's important to acknowledge and celebrate those who break the mold.
But it also makes you wonder if this whole AD starter pack thing isn't just perpetuating the cycle.
Yeah.
If everyone with a famous last name starts out as an AD, doesn't that just make it even harder for outsiders to break in?
Yeah, it's almost like a form of gatekeeping, isn't it? Oh, you want to act in Bollywood? Well, first you better go fetch some chai for your famous uncle on set.
Right, like it becomes this prerequisite, this extra hoop to jump through that most people don't even know exists.
Yeah.
And what about the people who genuinely want to work behind the scenes? The ones who don't necessarily want to be actors? Is the AD experience valuable for them too?
That's another angle to consider. For someone like Ibrahim Khan, maybe directing is the end goal. So the AD experience isn't about building an acting resume, it's about learning filmmaking from the ground up.
Right, it's like he's saying, I'm here to learn, to make my mark, but on my own terms.
Exactly. And maybe that's a sign of how things are changing. Maybe the AD starter pack will become less about lineage and more about genuine passion for filmmaking. A choice, not a requirement.
That would be amazing. A Bollywood where opportunity is based on merit, not connections.
Exactly. A place where talent can shine through, regardless of your background or your last name.
And speaking of change, we can't ignore how the digital revolution is impacting all of this. We've got streaming platforms, independent productions, all these new ways to make and watch content. It's shaking things up.
Totally. It's a game changer. It creates opportunities for new voices, new stories, and maybe, just maybe, it levels the playing field a little bit. It gives people who wouldn't normally have access to Bollywood a chance to be seen and heard.
So maybe this whole AD starter pack thing, while it's still happening, it might become less important. If talented people can reach an audience directly, without going through the traditional Bollywood system, then who needs the old formula?
It's a real possibility. The old rules are being challenged, the power dynamics are shifting. It's an exciting time to be following Bollywood.
It really is. So as we head into the final part of our deep dive, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what the future holds for this whole AD starter pack phenomenon. Will it fade away? Will it transform? Or will it remain this powerful symbol of how Bollywood deals with family connections and opportunity?
I'm excited to explore that with you, but first, let's get specific. Let's look at a few examples of how this AD starter pack has played out for some individual star kids.
Get into the nitty-gritty, you know?
Great idea. Let's dive into the details. Okay, so we've talked a lot about this whole AD starter pack phenomenon in Bollywood, but I think it's time to get specific, put some faces to the concept.
Definitely. Let's look at some examples, see how this actually plays out for these star kids. Perfect. So let's start with Vrindavan. We talked about him earlier. He was an AD on My Name is Khan before his acting debut. What do you think? How did that experience impact his career?
Well, for Varun, it definitely shaped the way people talked about his debut. The media really emphasized his AD experience. They portrayed him as this hard worker, someone who paid his dues, learned the ropes.
And I guess that helped counter the whole nepotism thing, right?
Exactly. It made it harder to just dismiss him as a product of nepotism.
But what about the audience? Did they actually buy it? Did they see him differently because of his AD experience?
Hard to say for sure, but I think it helped. He wasn't instantly written off as just another privileged kid. There was a sense that he'd earned his place.
Interesting. Okay, so let's compare that to Arjun Kapoor. He also started as an AD, but his journey has been perceived a bit differently, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. Arjun worked on films like Kal Ho Na Ho and Salami-ish, as an AD, but he was still seen as benefiting from his family connections. His uncle, Boney Kapoor, is a big producer.
Right. So even with the AD experience, the nepotism label stuck.
It did. It shows that it's not a magic solution. It doesn't automatically erase those perceptions.
So it's more complex than that. It's not just about holding a clapboard for a year. There are other factors involved.
Absolutely. It's about family ties, individual talent, and how the media portrays them.
And let's not forget Siddharth Malhotra. We mentioned him briefly before. He was an AD too, but he still had to audition, still had to hustle.
Yeah, Siddharth's a good example of how, even with the AD experience, it's not always easy.
Exactly. It might open some doors, but it doesn't guarantee a smooth ride to stardom.
Right. So we've seen how the AD starter pack can have different results for different people. But overall, do you think it's a good thing for the industry?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your take on that.
It's a tough one. There are pros and cons for sure. On the one hand, it can be seen as a positive step. It exposes these star kids to the nitty-gritty of filmmaking. They see how much work goes into it, all the different roles involved.
Right. They're not just showing up on set delivering lines. They're seeing the whole machine in action.
Exactly. And that can breed humility, an appreciation for the craft, for the collaborative effort.
And maybe it even helps level the playing field a little bit. Like, they're not just handed a lead role right out of the gate. They have to work their way up.
Right. But then there's the other side of the coin.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. What are the downsides?
Well, some people see it as perpetuating privilege. Like, it reinforces this idea that these kids deserve a fast track just because of their last name.
And it raises questions about whether talent and hard work are truly being rewarded.
Exactly. And it can also make it harder for people without those connections to break into the industry.
Right. It's like saying you have to be born into this world to have a real shot.
And that's not fair. It limits the creativity, the diversity of voices in Bollywood.
So what's the answer? Do we just get rid of this whole AD starter pack thing altogether?
I don't know if there's a simple solution. It's about finding a balance, right? Recognizing the value of experience while also making sure everyone has a fair chance, regardless of background.
So it's about creating an industry that's more inclusive, more meritocratic, a place where talent really does rise to the top.
Exactly. And it's about encouraging these star kids to use their platform, their privilege, to advocate for change.
Right. They have this unique position. They can use it to push for a more inclusive industry, a more diverse Bollywood.
Absolutely. And, I think the rise of digital platforms offers some hope.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, these platforms, they provide alternative pathways for talent to emerge. They bypass the traditional gatekeepers of Bollywood.
I feel like they're creating new entry points, new ways to get your foot in the door.
Right. And maybe as these platforms become more and more influential, the reliance on the AD starter pack will diminish.
That would be pretty amazing. It would signal a real shift, a move towards a system that values talent above everything else.
Exactly. It's about creating a Bollywood that truly reflects the richness and diversity of India, a Bollywood that embraces all voices and stories.
And that's a future worth fighting for.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've looked at this AD starter pack from all angles, the history, the motivations, the pros, the cons.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
And for our listeners, I hope this is giving you a better understanding of this trend. It's complex, it's controversial, but it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, there's no easy answer, but it's a conversation worth having.
As Bollywood keeps evolving, it'll be interesting to see how this practice evolves.
Absolutely. Will it fade away? Will it transform? Only time will tell.
So keep watching, keep thinking critically, and let's see what the future holds for Bollywood and its aspiring stars.
Great advice. Until next time, happy watching, everyone.